What's up everyone, this is Fahjah and we're back once again today with another production video. Today we're going to go over my track Smash with Chyl, which came out on Dimmock Records last year. It got crazy support from MARSHMELLO and he had been playing it in his sets all over the place. He's still playing it, so that was really cool to get all that support. A lot of people asked me to do a run through on this track, so we're going to get right into it. So as usual, we're going to start off with the percussion, which is like the foundation of the track essentially. So for the kick, I got this kick from Chyl. I believe it's also from the Speed House Movement Family Pack. I'm going to put the link to that. It's a free download in the description below, so check that out. So it's just a very short, punchy kick. Nothing crazy. And then for the hats, I got this. So Chyl had put in this one hat. Quick and snappy, and I wanted to add something a little bit more open to add like some big energy to it. So I threw in this one. I compressed it a bit with OTT, sausage fattener. I used SPL attacker to really give it a bit of a punch to it. I used Soothe to tame some of the frequencies of it, the high frequencies. Now again, like I said in some of my previous videos, I used to do some pretty sharp brick wall EQs. I try not to do that anymore. You can sometimes, but avoid it if you can. And then MJUC just to control some of the peaks. Then we also have this little hat loop that Chyl added in, kind of like a shaker. And then we got these claps here. Very simple, snappy claps. I think they actually might be from Speed House Movement Family Pack as well. Then moving on to the main part of the track. So this is a bass line that I use in a lot of my other tracks. The same kind of synth. It's got like this Mr. Orzo kind of vibe. I believe in Hoya I used Serum, but this time I actually used Silent. Silent has a bit more of a warm, thick, kind of analog sound, I would say. Not quite, but it's just thicker than Serum, so I recommend using it. So it's just a square wave synth. And so the processing I did on this is pretty similar to what I do in a lot of my other tracks. So basically I start off with OTT, Decapitator because I wanted to really give an analog sound to it, and Decapitator is like an analog kind of distortion plugin. Bit of Blood Overdrive, nothing too much. Isotope Trash, which isn't working on my new computer, but I used a bit of that for some extra beef and distortion. Just a little bit of Echo Boy, adds kind of like some tail to it. PsyQ I always use to boost the highs, so I boosted it quite a bit on the highs and a little bit too. Great additive EQ. Fab Filter just to add some more EQ to it. I did this completely by ear, very random to be honest, so can't really explain why, it just sounded good this way. And then Side Widener, so widens it without messing with the mono signal, doesn't create any phasing issues. Then Parallel Compression, as usual, put into mono, and then added sausage fattener, so it just puts a really nice fat signal right down the center and makes these kind of bass lines sound really great. Really good with Speed House and even some other genres, other types of leads. Then on a reverb channel, I put sausage fattener. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of like making it fat, then widening the stereo width, then OTT to kind of control it. Then it gets sent into a reverb, a fairly big one. And then what happens here is I have Fruity Limiter running. So what happens is every time the bass line plays, the reverb gets sucked down. And then when the bass line stops, it opens up and you hear the reverb. So let's check that. So it's very subtle, but it actually, you'll see. Yeah, so it's like kind of alternating. So this is a cool way to kind of make your leads more interesting is by doing this effect. Sometimes you can do way more drastic ones, especially in trance where like you have like a pad and then it just opens up like crazy. This is just like a cool little subtle one that really adds to the bass line. And then I EQ it just to clean things up. Lastly, on the final bus where everything's being sent to, I have sausage fattener just to kind of glue things together a little bit. You don't need to worry about Endless Smile and Filter. Those are just kind of effects. Side Widener, once again, to widen it even more. And then a final EQ. And I cut out the sub to make room for the sub that I'm going to add in. And then you got LFO tool. Nothing crazy. Now I have a noise channel here. This was just to add some subtle top frequencies to give it some more energy. Just a little bit of OTT. PsyQ to boost the highs, make it sound nice. Fab Filter to EQ everything out, and yeah, just really focus on those high frequencies. And then I widen it so it's spread just like the bass line. Soothe to kind of control it, make sure it's not too harsh or crispy. And then LFO tool, it has the same envelope as the bass line, so it all kind of moves as one and becomes essentially one synth. Moving to the sub, it's pretty simple. I just got I got three oscillators, but they're actually only playing in two different octaves, both sine waves. In Hoya, I did a square and a sine, but this one just a sine wave was best. So same chain that I usually do for my subs. Sometimes it's a roughly different order, but pretty much the same. So Camel Crusher, which isn't working. Sausage Fattener, Q to boost it a little bit. And then there's a sub filter. So as you probably have seen I do in my other tracks, basically what I do is I find my frequency to note chart, or my note to frequency chart, and I find the root note of the key, and I boost that frequency accordingly. So root note of this key, I believe, was B. And so I did my note to frequency chart. B corresponded with about 38 or 39 hertz, so I boosted that. Then I put an OTT after to tighten everything up. So basically what's happening is just kind of saturating, boosting, Q to really emphasize certain frequencies, and then it gets tightened up with OTT. And then Fab Filter just to carve out anything that's really not the sub. I have LFO tool, and I'm carving it a little bit more than the bass line just because I want to make room for that kick. And then MGUC just to control it a bit again. Then we'll move on to kind of like the ear candy. So there's nothing crazy. It's this vocal pretty much. And it's just playing in the gaps of the bass line. So what's happening is like the bass line plays and then alternates between the main vocal. And then I have these little shots, my kind of signature shots that I use in so many of my tracks.
Wait, back it up.
Just like random different things that I chopped up. And yeah, basically the way to make your bass lines interesting in kind of speed house or really any genre is, you know, obviously you don't want your bass line playing the whole time, or not always, but maybe sometimes. And when it's not playing, you just have little things coming in. So it's a good way of filling up your track, making it sound interesting without having it just be stagnant the whole time. You don't want all these elements playing at once. Instead, you get this thing where it's like a bass shot, and then it alternates with something else, and then a bass shot, and then, you know, there's a vocal. So that's a cool little thing you can do. And then we just have some simple effects. There's just kind of some sweeps that Chyl had added in. Little crashes kind of thing. Yeah, I think you guys get the point. Now, moving to the second drop. This is a pretty straightforward drop. So I got this donk bass sample, which I got from a sample pack that Use Caution sent me. Just like a UK bounce bass, donk. And basically, I compressed it with OTT, distorted it, saturated it, you know, the usual works. And then I boosted a little bit with Q, add some highs and low end to it. And then SPL Attacker just adds some punch to it. I would probably use Transient Shaper now. I don't really use SPL as much anymore. Then I got Vitamin Stare, just boosting the mids a little bit. It's just a nice way of adding some warmth, I guess, or thickness to your sound. Then Fab Filter to EQ it, manage some levels, and take out the sub from it. Then LFO tool. Now LFO tool wasn't really needed because, well, the bass line literally is cut perfectly to fit with the kick, but it does have this little drag off at the end here, you'll see, which just kind of shapes the bass a bit and, I don't know, really glues it nicely to the kick. Then you got the sub. Now the sub was actually made in silent, and it's made like a bass pluck. It's also sine waves, and it has a similar processing chain to my other sub. So saturation, distortion, you got the frequency booster, sub filter, and then, you know, more saturation and compression. It's just like subtle amounts of a bunch of effects. That's what I do with a lot of my sound, just subtle amounts of different distortions and saturations, and that adds up into something cool. And since it's a pluck, I use SPL Attacker to add some punch, and the EQ just to really carve out so it's only the sub. And then once again, LFO tool, and yeah, this just shapes it so it's perfectly filled with the kick. It's just kick sub. It's like an alternating bouncy kind of bass line. And then the top parts of the second drop are pretty simple. Basically, you just got this vocal, and that's just more saturation and EQ and sidechaining the vocal. I often sidechain vocals on drops because it adds a bit of bounce to it, but you only want to do it like a little bit. You want it enough so that it gives it bouncy feel, but not so much where it's just like completely kind of lost in the track, you know? It needs to sit on top. Your vocals should usually be sitting on top. And then I have this like little percussion loop I cut up from Alerts pack. But what I did was I cut out the hats from this because I wanted it to fit perfectly with my hi-hats. So you'll hear here, I'll play with all the percussion. So my hi-hats just fit nicely with that. just kind of cut it up and everything is glued together great. Because his hi-hats layered with mine made it just a little bit muddy, so didn't need that. And then we will move on to the breakdown to end things. So what we got here is my Respace, which I use on a lot of tracks actually. All right, so it is a serum patch. And then I have Nexus below, which is just adding a bit of sub to it. So for the Res, I have, yeah, again, kind of the same idea of a chain. It's just a bit of saturation, distortion, layered several times, and then EQ'd. And then as this Respace opens up on the filter, you'll hear here, I have a soothe, and that's essentially just to control the top frequencies so that it doesn't get too sparkly or too harsh or anything. And you'll notice on my EQ, I carved up this top end, and the reason I did that was because I needed to make room for the vocal that plays on the breakdown. You know, I didn't want them to interfere too much. So I really just carved that out hard. So you'll hear the vocal here. All right, so I added, again, another very similar kind of chain. It is a little plate, OTT. There's vocal synth. I won't open up vocal synth because last time I clicked it, my entire thing crashed and now I'm re-recording the video. So, but I'm pretty sure I had just used like distortion within vocal synth and then there's like a bit of echo and chorus on it. It's nothing complicated. Blood overdrive, more, and this one's a lot harsher because I wanted like a stereo box kind of effect. More EQ, MJUC to control it a little bit, and then soothe because with all that distortion, it kind of added some, you know, some harshness to the vocal, so this really kind of cleaned it up. Be careful though, because sometimes you can take too much out of it using soothe. And then we got this break sample, which is just like from some sort of old Amen Breaks track. And basically I EQ'd out the low end of it because I wanted to make room for a kick. So I added in my own kick sample because it needed to be extra punchy because like it's an old sample, so the kick isn't coming through fully. So I need to put my own kick. And you'll notice there is a MIDI trigger here, and it's following the kick because I wanted to sidechain the Respace. And I just have like a very quick sidechain being triggered with an LFO tool. Yeah, you can see that happening there. And then there's just like some simple effects on it. There's like sweeps going on in the drop or on the breakdown. Little like shots and things like that. Nothing overly complicated, honestly. Just little FX. So that's kind of how you have to see your tracks. You know, you have to like, you have your core elements, those are the focus, and then you just add little ear candies all around it. And the ear candies should be subtle, nothing that really takes away from the main idea of it, and nothing that overly muddies the track. And then actually lastly, we're gonna move on to my build-up. So it is pretty simple. It's essentially just, I'm slowly introducing the bass lines. And what I'm doing is, so it's following a similar pattern to the drop bass line. And actually, the pattern it's playing here was what the original drop sounded like. There was a different drop that we were gonna release, but Dimmock had asked me to change it and make it a little bit more fun and bouncy. So I did, but this is playing what the original drop was gonna play. And yeah, it's essentially just slowly introducing those elements. So I'm filtering it up, filtering it down. And then I have an endless smile. I love using endless smile. It's just a very easy way to turn things into risers. You know, I'm slowly introducing the vocal as well. Let's hear that. And then I took the Respace and I essentially turned that into a riser too. It's slowly being pitched up. And it has that endless smile on it as well. And then I believe I added in some actual risers in some places. There's some sweeps that Chyl had, some snare builds, of course. It's nothing overly crazy. I really like for my builds just to like take the main elements and turn them into risers, and then also slowly introduce drops from, or elements from the drop. That way everything is kind of tied together. I think that's like a cool way of doing it. And then just add in some simple effects that are in the background and that don't, you know, mess with the main elements too much. So I actually just wanted to mention something before I end the video. So just so you guys know, I actually offer lessons for anyone who might be wanting to learn to produce. I do one-on-one video calls with people where we can do 30-minute to hour-long calls, and I can go over anything that you might need help with in your music or general career. I've done this multiple times with students and usually see pretty good results. So if you want any help with that, just be sure to contact me on Instagram, Facebook. But yeah, anyways, that's basically how I made my track Smash with Chyl. If you guys have any questions about anything I did, just be sure to ask me in the comments below. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and I will see you next time.